Welcome back, Immigrant Nation. Another week, another new episode. Thank you for being here and thank you for always joining us. I really appreciate whenever you join us. As you know, if you want to reach out, we are available on all social media. Our handle is at animmigrantslife@yahoo.com. If you want to send an email, our email is at animmigrantslife@yahoo.com. That's where you can reach me if you want to be a guest on the podcast or if you know someone that wants to come on the podcast. Just email us, message us on our social media, and we'll get back to you ASAP. That's the biz. Now, let's talk about this week's episode. This week, we have a fascinating guest that is bridging the East and the West by sharing Chinese philosophy on his social media. Half-Taiwanese, half-Texan, he's on a mission to share profound insight and wisdom from his unique upbringing. We talk about a lot of topics like the utility of gender role, his definition of the term Asian American, and his distinction between ethnicity and nationality, and the negative effects of diversity because of its chaotic nature. This is one episode that will give you a way different perspective, so let's not waste more time. Without further ado, let's get into the show. Isa, dalawa, tatlo. Today's guest is a philosopher who is known for his insightful thoughts on social media. He will impress you with his wisdom and then charm you with his enchanting brown eyes. Everyone, please welcome Henry Vaughn.
Oh, it's quite the intro. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, man. Thank you for coming on the podcast, man. And I'm glad that we finally reconnected and do this.
Yeah, no, this will be my first. I hope that's not a problem, but I'm pretty excited to love these conversations.
I love first timers, man. I love it. Anyways, before we move on, why don't you tell the Immigrant Nation where they can reach you or if you want to promote anything?
Oh, sure. So I don't have a big social media presence, but I can be found on Instagram. It's halfblood_philosophy. It's just my posting ground for whatever kind of thoughts come into my head. So that's me.
For the listeners, you got to check it out. It's so interesting. That's one thing I love. I was so happy when I bumped into your account. I was like, yo, this dude is cool. I want to talk to this guy.
I appreciate it. I think my big background is that so my mom was born in Taiwan and my dad was born down south in Houston, Texas. And well, I just think that there's a lot of I've learned a lot of lessons from living kind of in between that spectrum. And I don't see a lot of people. There are more of us now. The more of the in-betweens kind of talking. But I just want to kind of put my own thoughts out there. Add what I have to say to the mix. So,
of course. How did mom and dad meet?
so my mom immigrated to the United States when she was real young. She was about 5 years old, and they met on a high school trip in Washington, D.C., actually.
Where are you located now? You said Houston?
I actually live on the western side of the state of Texas. I'm in the military. But my whole family home base is all still back in Houston. Most of us still live back there.
And you're still active?
Yes. Yeah. So I work for the Air Force.
Oh, Air Force. Excuse me, Mr. Smarty Pants over here.
It's a bunch of nerds, man.
Yeah. Well, that's why Smarty Pants.
Yeah. No, it's a good group of people. I think we have an interesting mission set.
Yeah. So. Taiwanese blood. What kind of language do they speak there? I don't even know.
So Taiwan's pretty interesting. My grandparents, if you ask them, the main language of Taiwan is Taiwanese, which can mean a lot of different things, but it's basically like Chinese Hokkien. It's from Fujian province. It's the simplest, but also because they were recently taken over by the mainlanders, they also speak Mandarin Chinese, which is what I speak.
And you speak fluently?
I'm pretty good. I do speak pretty good Mandarin Chinese. It's a pretty big influence on the way I think. I think.
Who taught you?
Well, it's interesting. Back when I was a little kid, my grandma, my ama, she cut a deal with my dad. My dad from Houston. My dad wanted us to learn Chinese, and my ama wanted us to learn Taiwanese. So we did both. There's a Taiwanese community center down in Houston, and we took classes in Taiwanese and Chinese.
What was the deal?
Oh, it was like, well, my dad paid for the Chinese classes and my grandma paid for the Taiwanese classes. So,
That's funny, man. Hey, good for you, right? Are you grateful that you learned how to speak Mandarin and Taiwanese?
wow, it's one of those things that you hate when you're a kid. Like, I actually hated going to Chinese school. I did not like learning Chinese. I did not like learning Taiwanese. I didn't like being different. But I mean, you do enough years of that, and then eventually, when you're an adult, you're like, oh, this is actually, I don't know. It's just like kind of interesting because you have a longer view of time, and you realize that there are more people out there who actually do speak this language, and it helps connect you to them. So afterwards, I was grateful. At the time, it was terrible.
Was it every Sunday?
Every Saturday morning, yeah, you know how it is. You're the
I
first
would hate that
generation
too, man.
Saturday morning language school.
That's funny, man. If you ever have a kid, or I don't know if you do, would you send them to a language school?
Oh, I think about this a lot actually. Probably not. Um, I mean, you have to learn a foreign language in the United States schooling system, anyways. I don't think that I'll pass on my Chinese, mostly because it's becoming a smaller and smaller part of my heritage. Just like most Americans, kind of assimilate into the broader, kind of largely Anglo-Saxon culture of the United States. I'm the third, maybe the second generation, depending how you define it. And I speak Chinese as as like a skill for work, but even for me, it's pretty hard to find use for it. So if you talk about my kids, who will be the fourth generation Americans, um, they probably won't have any need to speak Chinese. So I don't anticipate that becoming a thing, to be honest.
Really? That's a very interesting point because what I'm hearing is like Mandarin is like the second, the coming language that you need to learn because like it's like 1 out of 5 person speaks it or something like that.
It's true. There are a lot of Mandarin speakers, and it has been fun for me to be able to speak Mandarin. But there's just so much like just so much work that has to go into learning a language if you don't learn it naturally.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I think the way things are going in the future, if my kids want to learn Chinese, obviously I would support them in doing that as just an interest or a hobby. But I think it's not something I'm going to force them to do just because my parents forced me to do it. I think it would have to be something that they would want to do.
Yeah. Speaking of that, having kids and whatnot, I love that post that you had about third culture kids being overly attached to their parents' land.
Oh yeah. Well, like there are a lot of third culture kids out there nowadays, and I think it's it's not always an enviable place to be. I think there are a lot of there are people who are attached to their parents' homeland, and that's not necessarily bad if you choose that for yourself. But I think for my mom, if you ask her if she wants to go back to Taiwan, she'll just say no. She's not interested because she spent 45 years trying to become an American and fitting in America. And why would you want to like go back to the place that you spent so much time getting away from? I think it's kind of it's a form of emotional toil that can be kind of it can be tough on people. I don't know. I think finding home is something that everyone wants to do, and then you can't really have two different homes, realistically speaking.
Yeah, exactly. Why did mom had a terrible life in Taiwan? That's why she doesn't want to come back.
Oh no, it's nothing like that. Like, so my mom left Taiwan when she was 5, so she's old enough to remember it. But it's not like my grandma. My grandma left Taiwan when she was 30. My grandma grew up and she went to school there and she graduated and got married in Taiwan. So my grandma will always be kind of defined by Taiwan, by the island, by the stories of the Taiwanese people. But for my mom, it's more like this kind of hazy idea. My mom went to American public schools. She grew up in Houston. She got her first job in Houston. She got married in Texas. That's her home. Like this kind of hazy, faraway island. It's something neat to talk about, but it's not like my mom doesn't have any friends there or people that she's like deeply attached to. Her stories are American stories, so America is her home. And I think it's it's very hard on people to try to do both, try to have both places as a home.
Yeah, very interesting. I understand that point though, because sometimes me as an immigrant, sometimes I have family members that like saying, "Oh, bring your kids to the Philippines or visit them, whatever," which we did, we had fun. But sometimes I have cousins that are like grew up like 20 years old, and their parents are forcing them to go visit. I'm like, there's nothing for them to do there. If they
It's
don't,
tough, right?
if they don't want to go, there's nothing for them to do. Their friends are here. They're Canadians. They're not Filipinos. But trying to explain that to those immigrants that are like attached to that country, it's hard.
Yeah, and I think in the past, it would immigration used to be a one-way trip. Like you would leave the old country and come to the new country, and there was no going back. It was something you had to really commit to. Nowadays, there's people who immigrate, but then they plan to fly back, or they fly back every other year, and that's people's choice. I don't want to denigrate that. I just think that it's hard on people to expect others to think that way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like migrants, they're more migrants than immigrants. They'll work, make
Exactly.
some money, come back. You know.
Yeah, but that can be kind of hard because you never really settle down anywhere.
Yeah, you're right. Like in a little bit about you, just like being always in the middle. Like you never know where you at.
Yeah, it's not a very. I mean, it's not a very comfortable feeling. I think that's honestly like the hardest part about being a migrant is that like or an immigrant is that you're still attached to the old country, but you want to be in the new country. And I think most of my siblings, my family, my brothers and sisters were like, Taiwan's cool. I definitely think that everybody should go back to the old country just to see it for experience and stuff. I think there's lessons to be learned there because that's definitely things that I've learned from it. But America is our home. Like my parents chose America, and I don't want to I don't want to be in two different places. So we're very very American now. So
Yeah,
I don't think
hundred
there's
percent.
anything wrong with that.
None at all. None at all. Like wherever you're home, feel at home. That's where you stay. There's nothing wrong with that. I want to ask you if you're okay with it. How
Sure.
much the situation in Taiwan affects you personally?
Oh, that's a fun question. I mean, growing up, we heard about it all the time, and I'm very well versed on Taiwanese history thanks to my mom. I think the the situation in Taiwan is even as a military member, as a member like who speaks Chinese and is like active duty, it doesn't affect me that much at all. But it's kind of that classic situation of where it means nothing until it means like if like the worst were to happen and an open conflict over Taiwan happened, then it would affect me a whole lot. But the reality is that it's kind of a Taiwanese problem, and most of us in America don't really have to think about it. Like 98% of the time, we're not really worried about it. So
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
guess so. I mean, they're not sending missiles. You know what I'm saying?
well, not
Hope,
right now. They're not.
hopefully never.
No, I mean, you're from Philippines. Do you ever worry about the Chinese and taking over the South China Sea? Like,
To be honest, no. I'm like, yeah,
it's
I'm pissed a little bit when I hear it. I'm like, yo, come on, go back to your side, But
yeah.
like now they're planning to have, you know what ROTC is?
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Reserves
went through
there.
ROTC.
So in the Philippines, growing up, to graduate college, you have to go through 4 years of ROTC. It's mandatory.
Really?
Yeah, like this is back in early 2000. I think they dismantled it. The idea was because in the World War II, they wanted soldiers. You
Oh yeah.
know
No, they copy the American system.
exactly. So they copied the American system. They want to do that. I'm like, but now it doesn't apply. Like, dude, if we ever face China, we're one button away. One press of a
Hmm.
button away, we are obliterated. Like, it's
Well,
dumb.
I don't know. See, that is the game theory involved, right? It's like, and this is something I feel like Texas helped me understand. It's like you don't have to, you don't have to, destroy the other country. You just have to defend what's yours. And like, um, That's something the Chinese understand really well. It's like people talk about the U.S.-China conflict all the time. China doesn't have to invade the United States. They just have to make sure that they get what they want. But the same thing applies for the Philippines. Philippines doesn't need to go toe to toe with China. They just need to make sure that they can protect their fishing waters and the shipping lanes and not get bothered by the other
The thing is, we
side.
can't. We can't protect it.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy though. If you believe you can't, then you of course you can't.
If the states, if the U.S. comes by, yeah, we could be helped, but just, I mean, like, just toe to toe, it obviously is not gonna happen. But my point is, they're planning to bring back the ROTC again. Just the idea
Oh,
of
really?
like, yeah, I'm like, dude, I hated that, man. I hated ROTC. That's one thing I'll never like. I grew up in a town that has like a big. Being a soldier is like the thing for you in the town that I grew up in,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So I hated it. I hated the idea of like, oh, somebody's telling me what's up. It doesn't work for me. Though my uncle became one of like he's like a Navy SEAL in the Philippines, like the highest of the
Oh,
high,
yeah.
which I admire so much, and I'm so proud of him. But I'm like, I will never be like you. Awesome, you can do that. I can't do that.
Well, I mean, it the times are interesting now because everyone thinks about World War II, where it's just like a bunch of soldiers going toe to toe. But
Mm,
the way the technology has advanced so far, it's like we need so many coders and
mm.
computer programmers and all kinds of soft skills to do regular jobs. So I don't know. That's in the Air Force at least. But I mean, the goal is never to go to war. You mostly just want to make sure people are staying away from your islands and that your boats can fish where they're supposed to be allowed to fish. It's I don't know. I think if you think that you can't do it, then you're automatically correct. So it's
But
kind of
one thing for sure that I know of, China doesn't really invade countries. I don't think. Do you
it
think?
depends. Yeah, of course. I
Not
mean,
like by arms, by taking it away. They do it like by immigration or some sort, like a soft way.
I mean, it depends on how far back in history you want to go. I mean, if you look at China as an empire, which it
Mm,
is, and it always has been for thousands of years, China started in this one very small section in the middle China, where basically between Beijing and Nanjing, and it's just expanded outward since then. And for not for reasons that are hard to, it's just to protect what they consider to be theirs.
mhm.
Um, they're a land empire. They want to own the territory that is important for their trade and their farms. But I don't think there's any reason to believe that they wouldn't continue to do that. I think people think that in the modern world that can't happen, but I think that warfare is kind of like the one consistent of human behavior since forever. So it's not like war is over or wars of invasion are over. So
Yeah, but hey, I'm not in the clouds there, not believing the war is over. It happens, and it will happen till there's no human beings anymore, I guess.
well, I mean, people keep coming back, but uh, I think it's normal to fight over territory, and I think that I actually do appreciate the work that the Americans have done to kind of keep East Asia, like Japan and Korea and Taiwan. I don't think Taiwan would be a separate country if not for the American military, and most people don't really read into that very much. But I mean, if you're have you ever been to Taiwan?
No, no.
So,
I think I stopped over, if that counts.
oh, it's a fun little country. They got their stuff together, and I don't think it would be the same way at all if they had been rejoined back to the mainland. So,
Okay. Well, one thing I know is my ancestors, or a lot of Filipinos, came from Taiwan.
do you consider yourself
Austronesians.
Polynesians?
Well, Polynesian came from the Philippines, and the Filipinos came from Taiwan. Austronesians.
Yeah, I think that's right. I get Austronesians and Polynesians mixed up sometimes,
Uh,
but
Po- Polynesians like closer to Australia, but they are from there. We have the same DNA.
Yeah, I've heard that. One time I was up in Alaska,
Mm.
and the Christmas before, we got my mom one of those DNA tests and found out that she's Taiwanese and she's like 8% Pacific Islander, 8% Polynesian or something like that. So I'm up in Alaska working the fishing season, and there's a bunch of Samoans there, and they're like, "You're Samoan." I'm like, "I'm 4% Pacific Islander." They're like, that makes you one of us, man."
That's awesome.
So I was like, all right, I guess I'm Samoan for the week.
You're a big boy, right? Like, how tall are you?
Yeah, I think I go about 6 feet,
Yeah,
uh, 250. So
that's
yeah, I
definitely
guess
from your Samoan side.
yeah, that's something I've been learning about lately. It's like, yeah, those guys are tall and wide.
Yeah, I read a little bit about that. Like, how is this people that lives in islands are like giants? It doesn't make sense, right? Like, if you live in an island, whatever plant or whatever, you have to be small, or you should be small. But how come they're massive people? One thing I read, which obviously I could read more, is there was a mutation in the DNA of one of them.
Really?
Yeah, they have obesity genes, but it's a good obesity gene. That's why
Really?
they're big.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. I wonder if it's because I have heard about stuff like that where like these guys who are sailing across oceans from island to island, they store food really well. They store fat and calories really well because they're so far in between sources of food. I don't know if that's true or not, but certainly the way that Polynesians spread across the ocean is pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, man, they're great. They're great sailors, man. Like,
You ever been on a boat before?
have I been on a boat?
You ever do much boats?
No, I was watching this documentary on YouTube about Rapapa Nui, am I, Christmas Island, and
Oh,
how
okay.
that, and how like it was colonized by these people that just they traveled island to island, and they just have to watch the sun and the birds and the water. I'm like, yo, that is amazing.
Could be you, man.
No way, dude. I hate the water. Are you
Do you
crazy?
really?
Yes, I hate the water.
Oh
I
man, I
don't even,
freaking
well, I know how to swim, but Henry, if you and you fall in the water and you are drowning, my friend, I will say to your loved ones, Henry, love you so much. Because I'm not jumping in, my friend.
oh, it's fine. You can still run a boat if you don't know how to swim.
I don't like the water. I mean, okay,
um,
the funny thing is I grew up close to the water. I do. And I got on the boat many few times, but I don't like one. I don't even like swimming.
no, but hey, that's fair. I mean,
Yeah.
I right now I live like in the middle of nowhere. I'm like far away from the coast, so I can't stop thinking about like going to the coast, going to the beach, being on the water. It just sounds fun to me.
Yeah, I love the beach, but I prefer the mountain.
Yeah, well, we don't have any mountains either, so it's the worst of both worlds.
It is what it is. How did you get into philosophy, and how did you decide? When did you decide that I'm gonna spread philosophy on social media?
Well, before I was I've had a lot of weird jobs in a lot of strange places. Like I started out working fast food. I worked at an airport as an aircraft mechanic for several years, like a blue collar wrench turner kind of guy. I was a truck driver during the fishing season. I worked for a Fortune 500 helicopter company. We sold helicopters to the Chinese. Um, yeah, I've had a lot of strange jobs, and I studied supply chain in school. And now I'm in the military doing logistics.
Hmm.
And I think that yeah, I guess it's just like there are a lot of people who like talk about Asian America right now and have all these opinions about Asian America, um, which is good, which is great. But I think one of the problems with Asian America is that a lot of the discussion is coming from people who are mostly like college graduates or like mainstream like academia, like public speakers, like college professors, basically, which is fine. But I wanted to kind of expand the discussion about why certain Asian American cultures are certain ways and stuff. And I wanted to kind of like, I just wanted to like a wider perspective. I think that there's this stereotype of like certain Asian Americans who are like all doctors, lawyers, and engineers, and then certain other Asian Americans who are all like nurses and caretakers and stuff. And I think I don't know. I just philosophy is kind of like a nice general term for just like me kind of spreading my thoughts and my ideas. And then it really kind of exploded. I was in China in 2019, and one of the things about being like a mixed race kind of Asian American is that you're always kind of comparing like the white way of thinking versus the Asian way of thinking.
Hmm.
And you learn a lot about like we call it the European philosophy, like the white side of things. You learn a lot about that living in the US, but you don't really learn a lot about kind of the Asian side of philosophy. And I had a lot of exposure to that when I was overseas in China. And I kind of wanted to bring those ideas back to the States and kind of spread them out because I feel like there isn't a whole lot of understanding of why Asians think the way they do. Like there's this surface level analysis, which is fine, but I think there's a whole lot more to it that people don't really understand. So all that to say, I just interested in a lot of things, and they all kind of tie together under the bow of philosophy. So,
That's awesome, man. How do you balance between embracing your Asian heritage philosophy and your Western heritage philosophy?
well, I can tell that I'm becoming more and more Western every year. I just once I became an adult, I'm like I'm obviously American. I'm obviously in American culture. The Asian heritage will slowly kind of I don't want to say disappear, but definitely like become less influential over time. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of um, Asian philosophy actually relies upon less mainstream cultures kind of fading into the mainstream culture. So maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. But I think there's nothing really wrong with becoming American. So I've realized that my Taiwanese heritage will slowly fade away, and I've made my peace with that. That's really the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I completely understand that. I mean, like I have kids and, they're half Filipino and half Canadians. And I understand if, someday their Filipino-ness will fade. It is what it is. I mean, I never put effort or not effort, but put pressure on them like, hey, no, 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 you're Filipino, you're Filipino. No. I always remind them like you're Canadian. You have Filipino blood, but you're Canadian.
did you send them to language school or anything like that?
No, I don't. They barely speak the language.
Most of us. I was joking about it the other day. I was like, I think my Spanish is probably better than my Chinese. To be, I mean, just living in Texas.
Yeah, I guess you
Uh,
practice it a lot more than Chinese.
well, you definitely where I'm at right now. There's a lot more Spanish speakers than there are Chinese speakers, and that's just a consequence of where you live.
Yeah.
I think if there's a if you for people who live in cities, I think there's this kind of idea that you can just speak any language, be any kind of person, but really you're constrained by wherever you live because that's the people that are around you.
Yeah, 100%. Like here, people believe that, oh, if from Montreal, everyone's bilingual. That's not true, dude. There's so much people here that born and grew up here. They don't speak a lick of French.
Oh, do you speak any French?
I know a little bit, but I'm not that good, Like, I know a little bit. I could
Yeah,
understand, but not. I don't speak fluent French. Not because I'm from Montreal. But however, like where I'm on the side where I'm from, where I live, like you said, to your point, is like majority is English. You
yeah, and
know.
I think that there's something like I realize that there are a lot of people who are like very against the idea of like English assimilation, but I'm a very practical person, and I think it's just like I mean, if my grandparents didn't want us to learn English, they wouldn't have come to the United States. And I think if you want people to have their rights and their freedoms and their privileges, they have to understand the language that those protections are written in. And those protections are written in English. The Constitution is written in English, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like assimilation. That's the first thing I wanted to do when I moved to Canada. I
Oh
wanted to
yeah,
assimilate. Yeah, I mean, I'm living here. I knew I was gonna live there for the rest of my life, as much as
yeah,
I want. Right? Like, why am I not gonna accept being Canadian? Like it took me a while to tell myself like I am Canadian, but when it did, I'm like, yeah. Like so, let's say if people ask me, "What are you?" Like I'm like, I'm Canadian. No, no. What's you're from? I'm like, well, I'm Filipino, but I'm Canadian too. And it's
Oh, I
hard,
get those questions.
like it's hard to explain. Especially, I find it harder to explain to Filipinos to than
Oh
to
yeah,
yeah. Because you'll
yeah.
be like, I'm Canadian. I'm like, no, you're not. You're Filipino. You grew up in the Philippines. I'm like, yeah, I grew up in the Philippines, but now I'm Canadian.
Oh yeah. Like the difference between ethnicity and nationality is a very Western concept. And I've noticed that like one time I was working in a fast food and I was trying to explain to this Chinese couple like my mom is American, but we were speaking in Chinese. I said my mom is Tasha Meigwara, so like she's American. They're like, oh, so she's white. Like, no, she's Taiwanese, but she's American. So she's been here 50 years. And it just didn't make sense in Chinese. Like they could not comprehend that someone like to them, like in that language, you're always whatever you were when you were born. So if you could be in Chinese, like a third generation American, if you were Chinese ethnicity, then you're still Chinese. But that's the old way of thinking. I don't personally like. I'm a Westerner. I think the citizenship is more important than anything else.
Hell yeah, dude. I want that green card. You know what I'm saying? The power of the green card,
Yes, that's. Hey, I'm all about white privilege for everybody.
Dude, I want that privilege. I do. I have some white friends. I'm like, dude, give me some privilege. I want that privilege.
Hey, the goal is for everybody to have the same passport privilege. Like that's what we're
Exactly.
working towards, and
That's what
I
like
support
but you
that.
know what's funny? When I went to visit the Philippines, my sister told me, okay, when you get to the airport, there's two lines. There are two lines. You have to line off the Filipinos and the lines
Mhm.
for what you call this tourist. So
Yeah.
me in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm Filipino, right? Like I look Filipino, I'm from Philippines, whatever. But my passport is Canadian.
Oh yeah.
So so I was like, okay, so we had to line up on the tourist side, dude.
Hmm.
That line on the tourist side was like 500 people, and you go to the
Oh yeah.
Filipino side, there's like maybe 10 people. I'm like, I'm Filipino, I want to go there. I just want to get out of here.
Yeah, you see that a lot actually. It's Philippines should be the easiest to understand that because I mean there's so many different islands. Like Filipino itself is just a national concept anyways, right? Like with all the Ilocanos and the Minaloans and stuff like that. I don't know, like
Yeah, we're
it's
so divided. I mean, like that's one thing I'm always like amazed is like where the town I grew up in, you go to the next town, like literally the next town, they speak
Mhm.
different. Like the same language, but the way they speak is so different.
Same island.
Same island, dude. So right now where you
Wow.
live, right? Your town that where
Yeah.
you at. Go to the
Hmm.
next town and they will speak a different twist of English.
That's so strange to think. Like, how does that even happen?
I
But
don't. The word. This is the most funniest thing. So the next town over, and then the next town over, they do speak the same dialect, but instead of using D, they use R for words.
D and R.
Yes.
Oh man, that's a switch. I've heard of R's and L's switching, but D's and R's. I'm like, I don't know. Like islands have such a strange way of developing languages. Like I speak Mexican Spanish, but we get Puerto
Mexican
Ricans.
Spanish.
I was in. Okay, Mexican Spanish is the best Spanish. That's just
Why?
Henry's
Why do you think?
because it's just the one that I grew up with. There's literally no other reason than that. It's just the one I grew up listening to was Mexican Spanish. But if you listen to Puerto Ricans or Cubans like talk, they have like their very strange like Islander Spanish, and it's like same language, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. It's not as warm and cozy as Mexican Spanish to me.
Yeah,
So
they just slang. Going back to your social media, do you write the script that you say on your reels? Do you write it down?
I used to, but I have a full time job. So like honestly, like I'm an amateur content creator. I mostly just say it's only like a minute and a half. I would just say what I want to say, and then I'll just repeat it over and over and over again until it sounds good. So
Mm,
I mean,
okay. One of my favorite posts of yours is the one like I think you just finished eating rice or something.
mhm.
That-
Yeah.
I was like, this guy, I don't care if he's white, like he's still Asian.
Yo, you gotta eat rice. Like rice is rice is
Rice is
freaking
life,
awesome.
bro.
I have a whole bag of like jasmine basmati rice in the corner over there.
Of course, man. You posted something up that I wanted to talk to you about gender roles. What are your views on traditional gender roles and their impact on the society today?
Gender roles. I don't remember. I usually try to stay away from that conversation, but well, I mean, I'm not at the point where I'm telling people like this should be this or this should be that. I mostly do analysis, so I think gender roles are easy to understand if you're from a conservative background because a lot of conservatives live on like it's always from like the extremities of society. So like if you live on a farm or like a fishing village or some place that's not wealthy, not rich basically, and there's a limited amount of resource, gender roles make sense because it's the best way to extract maximum value from both the men and the women. It's actually it's generals get a huge knock in places like academia because their universities sit at the peak of society, and there's no real difference between a male brain and a female brain. I mean, there are obviously differences, but I mean, a male and a female living in the capital city and doing analytical work can both do good work because it's just one brain versus another. Whereas if you're living in a fishing village or a farm, there's a huge difference between what men and women are capable of because if you need someone to go tackle a cow that's running into the road, you're not going to send your 5'5" wife to go do it. I mean, maybe you would if you absolutely have to, but the first choice would always be the guy who's like 6'2" and 250 pounds. Like, so I think there's a big conversation being had about gender roles, but it's always had these very like elite clusters where they don't understand like where gender roles actually came from. So I mostly like to analyze why we have things. I don't really do much like, well, we should do this instead.
Yeah, that's one thing I like about your content is like you're just saying something, but you're not. It's
Mhm.
not really an opinion, but it's just based mostly on facts. Like this is what's happening. This is why. This is why what happened, and you take whatever you want to take from it.
That's what I'm going for. It's so easy to devolve into like political opinionated opinions and stuff like that. But I think it's more fun to understand why people are the way they are, and trying to figure out how people should be is a much harder question to answer.
Oh yeah, definitely. We were talking about this earlier about diversity. You know, it's the big thing now. Diversity for everyone, and I
Mhm.
loved your take on it about diversity and inherent chaotic uh, nature of it.
Yeah, it's I think that's mostly based off my childhood. It's just like the entire time growing up, like you would like break down like, is this the white side of the family way of thinking or the Asian side of the family way of thinking? It's like, am I supposed to take my shoes off in this house? Am I supposed to look this person in the eye, or am I supposed to shake their hand? It's like, and you can learn a lot from that, but it's very taxing mentally and emotionally. And I don't blame people for not wanting to deal with that. I think it's just it's hard on people. I think diversity has human costs, which sometimes is worth it, but not as a I don't know, like diversity as a side outcome is great. It's not something you should like build a society on, like as a be all goal, because it's you can't. So
Yeah, you need to have one thing. This is the language we're gonna speak, and then
mhm.
that's what we're gonna use as our business. Okay, you can speak whatever under other dialects, yes, but when we're doing business, this is the language.
There has to be a lingua franca, so to speak, that everyone can kind of agree on. And I think that's we joke about this. My brother just got married, and my brother's from Houston, like me, but his wife is from El Paso. Well, they're from Mexico originally, and we joke about this the entire time throughout the wedding. It was like, wedding starts at this time. Are we going to be on time for this? Is this Latin time or is this Anglo time? It's like because Anglo time, if it starts at 8 o'clock, you better be there at 7:55. if it's Latin time and it starts at 8 o'clock, you can be there whenever you want. So that was a real question to ask, though. I was like, is this supposed to start on time, or is this like a come as you go kind of thing? Which can be fun, but it's also kind of confusing.
Yeah, I understand. Like when my brother-in-law, who's Quebecois, white dude, let's say, he
Oh,
went to the
sure.
Philippines. He's like, dude, we went there and we're supposed to go to a island. Dude, no one was there. There was no boatman there. There's no guy. And they're like, and then they show up and they're like, so are we gonna go to the island or what's going on? And like, oh, we're gonna go when we want to go. And he's like, no,
Oh, yeah.
dude, we gotta go now.
Like,
So I had to explain to him like, because they have this like easy go lucky, like everything's
oh,
good in
yeah.
the hood, like, oh, the weather's nice, so it means it's gonna stay nice. Instead of like the Western mentality is like, no, there's a task, we need to do the task, and that we need to get there now.
Oh, yeah. My brother and I have this conversation like all the time. It really just depends on how close to the equator you are. Like, if you think about places where the Industrial Revolution took off, England and Germany and New England, basically the United States, all very far north, very short growing season, very harsh winters. But also in Asia, Japan, which is the same way. Japan has a very short growing season, very cold winters, but also they're very timely about everything. But the further south you get, man, like Middle China, Taiwan, Philippines, it's like there's so much sunlight. Like, why are you gonna worry about time? Like, who
We're chilling,
cares?
man. We're chilling.
Yeah.
Like last year, my uncle and my aunt came here to visit from the Philippines, and they were mind blown. Like how much, like the day are so long or the night are so short.
Yeah.
But I was, and you know what? I never noticed that when I was in the Philippines. I'm like, yeah, there's a certain time, and that's it. Like nighttime is nighttime. It never changes really.
Oh, but I could already tell they came and visited you in the summer. That's why your days were so long,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So in the wintertime, your nights are probably really long.
yeah. It is
You're
super
so far
long.
north. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is what it is. Hey, I always say poverty or this. I always choose this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind like, I don't think anyone really minds it. If you could the price of having, clean water and clean food and
Yeah.
factories and stuff is running on time, like that's okay, so that's basically what happened to Taiwan, right? Taiwan was like a tropical island for forever.
Mm.
And then like they were really lax about time. They had plenty of food. They were just like chilling. The Japanese were like, "All right, we're gonna put y'all to work. Factories, railroads, cotton mills, ports. Yeah, like that. They basically had that forced on them. It was, but
Okay.
but now
Yeah.
Taiwan is rich, so it's like I don't know.
What do you want, right? Like, yeah, like a good example, my town. When I was growing up, it was a small town. Like, it's a small town. Like, we pretty much know
Yeah.
everyone, right? Literally, we pretty much know everyone. But we always say, like, oh, we want fast food here, like McDonald's or whatever, right?
Mhm.
We had Jollibee. So, you know what Jollibee
Oh
is?
yeah, Jollibees. Yeah,
So,
fried chicken, man.
exactly, the greatest chicken. But anyway, so my point was like, we growing up and like, oh, I wish we have Jollibee, We have this, we
Mhm.
have that. Maybe we have a small mall. Now, that town that I grew up in is like that now. We have Jollibee, we have McDonald's, we have KFC, we have everything now. So when I visited, I was talking to my friend was like, they don't like it. Like, oh, we don't like it now because it's so industrious, like we don't
Oh
know
really?
everyone. And I'm like, dude, this is what we wanted when we were young. You cannot have Jollibee and be a small town. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because it's like everyone wants a million things, but there's like a price to pay for all. I mean, like for me, it's like the corporations in America. It's like everybody wants that feeling of like coming into a town and that their favorite fast food restaurant is there.
Mm.
But then you have to have like these like massive corporations which run everything. Like they're in 6,000 towns and 6,000 restaurants. It's like uh, it's a payoff, right? So you're paying for standardized food. So
Yeah, I mean, and I told my friends like, yo, dude, this is good. I'm telling you, I've seen both side. This is a good side. Like it's good
oh
that
yeah.
it was so convenient. Like you have to pay for convenience. I'm sorry. You cannot have like water buffalo roaming around and then want chicken joy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like you can't live in a rice paddy and have I don't know freaking like cell phone factories. It's like you gotta I don't know like modernization, industrialization. There are huge payoffs for that, but also there's a lot of nice things that come with it. So
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah. Now everyone's like, "Oh, I miss the old days." We could just go to the rice paddy and just chase the water buffalo and whatnot. I'm like, yeah, but that's gone now. Let's move on. You know,
so you're ready for progress, you know.
hey, for me, like it is what it is. I understand that we need to have progress. We need to lose those things. It doesn't work both ways. You cannot have the
Yeah.
cake and eat it too. It is what it is. And now it's like the town is like booming. Like it's close to becoming a city. And I
Hmm.
try to explain to them like, dude, this is what we wanted when we were younger.
Hmm.
Remember, we wanted malls. We wanted this. We want convenience. We have that now, and now you don't want it.
Yeah, it's the pace of development and the way people grow up is like kind of mismatched. It's like as you get older, you want things to stay the same, but things just continue to develop and stuff. Like that
Exactly.
happens in Texas all the time. It's like every year they'll turn some cow pasture into a new housing development. It's like kind of stinks, but I mean, maybe it's fine. I don't know.
That I don't like, by the way. The like condominiums. Oh, every time I see condominiums being built, I'm like, this son of a guns.
Not gonna lie, I wish we need smaller cities, but that's like a whole other. Yeah, smaller cities would be fine. I mean,
Yeah.
but that's what you get when you get a culture full of immigrants. It's like people. I mean, immigration is built into American culture. Like the reason that people want to have their cars and they want to drive all over the country and they want to take road trips is because their parents or their grandparents or some ancestor was like, I'm out. I don't want to live here. I'm going to go to the United States and become American. And so now we have an entire country of people who like taking road trips but don't like don't have a walkable city. So it's like
Yeah, I guess they like traveling. With
it's just
go
I
ahead.
don't know. It's just there's just payoffs. Like it's an entire country of people who want to be cowboys. So
Yeah, again, like I said, like you have to pay for something. You cannot have the cake and eat it too, right?
yeah.
With your opinions on social media, I cannot imagine how much hate you get.
Well, I haven't gotten too much hate. I may get some like mean comments every now and then, but it hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be. Um, there are certainly some people who think, but I get strange comments every now and then. They're like, "Oh, you're a communist." I'm like, "Well, no, I'm definitely not a communist. I do like people getting along, and I grew up in a house full of 11 people, but that doesn't make me a communist." So,
You should say, I'm working for the U.S. military, right? Like I cannot be a communist if that's the case.
oh yeah, no, 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 definitely not a communist. But I do think Americans could learn how to share better, just a little bit.
Yeah, like
That's a
healthcare.
well, that's a spicy conversation right there.
What's up? Tell me what's your opinion about that.
Obviously, people should have healthcare. Like that should be an easy thing to figure out. The hard thing is getting other people to care about the people next to them. And like I said, like I think America is basically a culture of rebels. It's an entire country of people who are like, I don't like my home country. I'm gonna go to America. I don't care about all the people, like all the friends, the families, the aunties, the uncles, the grandparents, the second cousins, third cousins, the in-laws. They left everybody and they came to America. But that has impacts. Like their kids, their grandkids are going to be pretty independent, and it's hard to get people like that to want to buy into something like a national healthcare system. That's what we're fighting really is kind of the loner mentality. That's the big problem with American society right now is everyone wants to be a loner, but we want things like healthcare. So
Yeah, I see that. I remember when I was working for this company, and we were dealing with this other company, and the VP of the company visited us. We went for lunch or whatever, and we started talking about healthcare. And it's like,
Oh yeah.
well, he's like, well, your healthcare is not really free because you pay for it. I said, yeah, we put all our money in a basket, and whoever needs that money takes whatever whenever you need it. But
And I think
obviously,
that's a great system. I mean, it's not perfect, obviously, but I don't think there is a perfect system. But I think Canada and Taiwan are both they're both playing by the same strategy, which is a stronger kind of social collectiveness that makes people care more about the person next to them. Whereas America is like 10, 11 times larger than Canada. There's just people are so much more mobile here, and there's so many more people that it's hard. It's hard getting people to really want to buy into a system that large.
yeah,
So
exactly. Like going back to my story, he was like, "It's not really free, and why am I paying for like someone's problem? Like I have money, I will take care of myself." Like, yeah, easy for you to say
oh
because you
yeah.
have money.
Yeah, that's basically it. That's the mindset right there. It's like that's that's um that's a hard thing to change. It's like, can you still be an immigrant nation and a welfare state? I think there's probably ways to do it for sure, but the U.S. is so large that it's going to take us quite a long time to get to that point.
I think so too. And going back to your point earlier about immigrants and whatnot, like I hear a lot about from immigrants now that they hate the tax, they hate the healthcare. Why am I paying for the healthcare? I'll take care of my own. And I
Mm.
hear it more from immigrants than from, I guess, Anglos.
Oh well, it is kind of something that's. I think there's something that people don't understand is that a lot of immigrants don't like other immigrants.
100%.
Like there are a lot of Mexicans in Texas who hate illegal immigrants.
We do.
Like they do not appreciate people illegally crossing the United States. And I was like, I understand everyone has their own situation. It's a complex world out there, but there's reasons for that. People don't like people who take away from them, and they feel like they're taking away from them. And I don't know if that's 100% true, but definitely a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with an immigration lawyer about this, and he made a good point that, and I had the same opinion when, like me, I came to this country. It took us $1 million for us to come here, right?
Yeah,
Incredible amount of money.
yeah.
And these people just comes in, ask for asylum, and then they get in. Like,
It's not
yo,
a it's not a good way to build a society.
exactly. Like
That's
where I live, we're close to the border, and there's a border. We don't have police on our borders. We're Canadians.
yeah. It's like yeah, it's Canada.
Well, they do, but they don't really. Like, yeah, once you cross, they'll be like, okay, well, you crossed the line. You're in Canada now. Now you're a prisoner, and then they'll be like,
Straight to jail.
okay, well, I want asylum. They don't really bring them to jail. Most of them, they bring to like places where they can stay. Then they process the paper. Me as an immigrant, that's one thing. Like, I understand why they have to cross, but there's a right way to cross. You know what I mean? Like, dude,
Yeah.
the incredible amount of money we spent to get here. My mom, actually, shout out. She did everything. Like everything. It cost us money because we almost didn't make it because there was a rebel in the Philippines that bombed the U.S. embassy.
Oh my god. Are you serious?
Yeah, and then they closed all the embassies,
Oh
and we
man.
didn't, bro. We were just waiting for a visa, and then they bombed it, and then they closed all the embassies. Then we had to wait if it's gonna open or whenever it's gonna open. We'd never know. Then they finally opened it, and then all our documents were expired.
Oh, for real? They still had them, but they were expired?
Yeah, so we had to do it again.
Oh
That cost
man.
more money. You know what I mean? So like trust me, like, okay, bro, Trudeau brought like few years ago some Syrian refugees. Cool, but not too much.
Well, it's like, are you bringing these people in because they desperately need the help, or are you doing it to look cool? Like, I
No,
don't know. Like, I think
it
there's a
was
lot
for
of
cool.
people
It was for
who are
coolness
doing
because
it
it was
for,
like the Syria thing situation.
yeah.
He brought like I believe it was like 20,000 Syrians. Where are you
Hmm.
gonna bring these people? Because right now we have housing problems.
Yeah.
You know, do
I
they
mean,
have a job? Do they have this? You know?
there are legitimate cases for bringing in a lot of these refugees. There are a ton of like Afghan refugees in Houston. A lot of them passed through the military bases actually because they had to get like vaccinated and stuff like that. Um, and that's probably just a consequence of us, being in that country. But I don't like it when people like. I'm gonna be honest. I'm pretty much not a huge fan of Trudeau. Like, just it seems like a lot of times he's just doing things for cool points. So I hope that's okay to say.
Oh,
but
it's your opinion, of course. Yeah.
uh, but I get why people want to migrate. I get why people want to like travel. But it it's just a difficult balance that has to be attained between maintaining a stable society that people want to migrate to and letting in enough kind of like people that could change the society. I guess it's like, and migrants do change the society, and that's generally for the better. But it has to be done in a manageable way.
Yeah. Well, now in Quebec, where I live, we need immigrants.
Well, that's true. Yeah, most North American countries do need immigrants for sure. I mean,
Yeah, but the thing is, with now they made it like they pretty much closed the border
oh, did they?
in Quebec. It's like you have to learn, you have to speak French, you have to learn how to speak French and all that stuff. So
Really?
now you see a lot of companies or like stores that looking for workers. We need
Oh,
immigrants to fulfill these positions.
yeah. And I think that's really like a help. Like, well, maybe not closing the border, but certainly a good way for people to integrate into society is to do those kind of jobs. But I don't know. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not a it's not a simple problem to solve. That's for sure.
No, it's not. It's not. It's a lot of like mess with our political situation here in Quebec and in Canada as well. I want to ask you. I don't know if you know, but remember before they translated the Bible into the lingua franca before the Latin,
Sure.
right? I feel like that's what happened with social media. Everyone has the voice, right? You understand? Like
That's an interesting take. What do you mean by that?
like back in the day, the only people that can read the Bible are the priests because they understand Latin. But then they
Yeah.
open it up, everyone can translate it to whatever language they want to, right? So they transfer the power
Uh,
essentially. So the way I look at it, social media is the same thing. It's like everyone has the power to translate whatever they want to say.
yeah, it's definitely an interesting. Yeah, it is kind of, I don't know. Everyone has a voice now, and some people you're like, well, should this person really be talking? And I honestly, I'm a big fan of free speech. I'm a big fan of people saying what they think. But it is intriguing to see how the Chinese have not been on board for them. They're like, oh, we could have social media, but no foreigners, no outsiders, no Americans. Like, you have to be a Chinese citizen. You have to put your name to your social media account. We're going to control. If you say something that we don't like, we're going to ban you. Like, they're very, their approach to social media has been very interesting. Whereas the West has just been like, you can say whatever you want, and we might ban you, but we might not.
Yeah, I see that. I see that point. What do you think? What's your take on that? Do you prefer the Chinese way, or it's better that everyone has like their own voice?
It's a tough question. I mean, what I don't like for sure, what I don't like is I don't like that there's all these like Westerners and Americans who are like beat down on their culture. Like, there are a lot of white people out there who are like ashamed to be white, which is something
Yeah,
that I don't I like. I like, it's like, why would you be like, so this is a big problem. When I was a kid, I was like felt really bad about being an outsider, felt really bad about just like not fitting in.
Hmm.
And I don't want anyone. I don't like people feeling that way about themselves. And there are a lot of like basically foreign powers like the Russians, the Chinese, who are producing this media to make Americans feel bad about being American,
Hmm.
which I'm really not a fan of. But it's tricky because like the Chinese solution would be to just cut out foreign media influence, foreign media access. And I'm like, well, that's not a solution. So um, so I don't know. It's like, do you let people just say whatever they want to say? And do you just follow like the Western strategy, which is like all opinions are equally valid? Or do you choose like a base, like a center local, like center thing to focus your thought around, which is like, I don't know, like some people it's Christianity, some people it's like America first, some people it's like Western liberalism. It's I would say that's a problem that no one really knows how to solve. It's like, what do you ultimately believe is true when there's so many people just like yammering in your ear all the time?
That's what
I
happened
don't
with
know.
your diversity, bro.
It's kind of true. It's like, I don't know. It's like you have to kind of fall back on something, and most people don't really know what to do with it. So,
Yeah,
um,
you need a leader. You need a clear line to follow, or else it's gonna be chaos.
this is something that the Chinese are very good at. So, like, the Chinese philosophy is basically religion's cool. You can have whatever religion you want. You can be whatever you want to be, but like Chinese, like you will be Chinese. Like all thought, all like history, all media is interpreted to like China is good. Like it all centers around that. Like that's the baseline is like China good, everybody else questionable. Like that's what they believe. It's not like a state religion or anything like that. It's just belief in the state itself. Um,
Hmm.
which I don't know if saying that's anything to copy, but it is interesting to see how they do that. So
Yeah, I love some of your posts that focus on like China being like if they have a problem, they just throw bodies on him, just
it's
fix it.
true. Well, the Chinese, I mean, for all the problems that they cause us in the West, they which there are many. I mean, but I don't want to get into that too much. But like, they are a very developed state. Their philosophy, their language, their written language, their history, it's it's older than the West itself. Like a lot of people, they look at other like a lot of Americans look at foreign countries like, oh, this is just some poor foreign country that wasn't either like I don't know like has no real significance. But China's not really like that. China is very old, so
And very effective.
they're very organized.
Hmm.
That's what I meant to say. Yeah, they're very put together. Um, but it's kind of hard to know how to deal with that.
Yeah, we don't want dictators, you know.
No, but like that's the choice. Like, do you become more like your opposition, or do you stay true to who you are, even if that means I don't know, like letting in a few like uh subversive types, I guess it's like spies or propagandists. Like there are Chinese media accounts on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram who are like actively spreading Chinese propaganda, and it's like, should we have these? I don't know.
They even have North Koreans now.
Oh, do they?
Yes, they're like, oh, I went to North Korea. It's so awesome. You should go there. You know,
Oh
it's so
yeah.
free. There's no stress. I'm like, oh, I don't know about that,
Uh,
dude.
yeah, the amount of like just I once read the support that there's like 30 or so troll farms designed to like just produce memes to scare white people on Facebook, and they're all from Russia. It's just like I don't know, man.
Yeah, I see. Hey, buddy, I think we're there. But before we close out, I want to ask you one thing.
Sure.
Since we talk about China and the West and whatnot, what do you think the West can learn from China?
I think that you have to respect the Chinese ability to organize. They have a very well put together bureaucracy, which is I don't think the Westerners even think of bureaucracy, think of government as a skill. I think we're taught taxation is theft and that the government is evil, which makes sense considering that most Americans are like rebels and like rejects from whatever country they came from. But the Chinese are very good at organizing, and I think that's because they have a strong government, they have a strong kind of mindset that bureaucracy is a skill to be mastered. And I think Americans have to like kind of remember that. You want to run a country, you got to have people who are good at running a country.
Excellent. Again, Henry, thank you for coming on the podcast, man. I really do
Oh,
appreciate
absolutely.
it.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been a lot of fun.
For sure. Have a good evening.
Thanks, man. You too.
Bye. Again, Henry, thank you for coming on the podcast. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, listeners, for listening. This is Aaron Deliosa for An Immigrant's Life. I will see you guys later.